Hi guys, it's Lynn with Soft Squares. It's been a while, but we are going to do the binding on this quilt, which is the Silver Jubilee. It is by Annie's Kits, and the whole quilt is completed, and there's a whole series on that. And here it is, so all 12 blocks. And then I did the sashing. There's a video on the sashing, and now it has come back from the quilter, and it's all quilted. And it's time to put the binding on it. And this is the fabric that they sent for the binding. And I'm going to show you guys a quick and easy way to figure out how to do binding on any quilt. And we're going to do it on this one. Again, this is the Silver Jubilee. It's a block of the month program through Annie's. You can click the link in the description below to get there if it's something you want to do. I've done a couple other quilts from them, and they have a lot of different kits. It does help me out if you use my affiliate link, but just wanted you to know where I got this. Now, this Daydreamer is the actual name of the pattern, and Silver Jubilee is the fabric line. I did not realize that for a long time, but it has two names, kind of. So each month you're going to get a block. It's going to show you where it goes in there and what it is. And this was block 1. I just happened to pull this out. Here's all the different colors of fabric that they're going to be sending you, and the instructions on how to do it. Again, we are done, ready to put the binding on. And I wanted to see, without measuring, if this will tell me what the finished block or quilt size is. And it's not telling me, and it's a good size quilt, so I'm just going to have to measure it. But what you're going to do is measure. Okay, so I've measured my quilt. My quilt is 65 by 83, and there's 2 sides to each of those. So 65 times 2 equals 130. 83 times 2 equals 166. Now we're going to add these two together to get the total circumference of the quilt, and it's 296. That's how many inches we need binding for. So now you're going to take this number and divide it by 40. And I need a calculator for that one. Okay, 296 divided by 40, and I'll tell you what this 40 represents in a minute. And it comes up to 7.4. So I'm going to take that number and round it up. Now, 7.4 represents how many strips of fabric we need. By rounding it up, we get 8. So we need 8 strips to have enough to go around this quilt. So what this is this is the length of the strip. Now, most strips are between 42 and 44, but we're going to do the diagonal or bias seams on that. So by the time you cut that down, cut the selvage off, just be on the side of caution. We're going to say each strip is 40 inches, and we know it's a little more than that, but that's a nice safe number. So we get that number. We've already been conservative, and then we rounded it up. So we are definitely going to have enough to go around this quilt. Hopefully that made sense. So we have 7.4 strips of just width of fabric, and sorry, we need 8 because we're rounding it up. And that is how I do my math on how to do that. And now I'm going to show you just a few tricks on how I bind this quilt. I'm not going to do the whole thing on the video, but I will show you how I start and stop my corners and any little tips I can think of along the way. But first I'm going to cut my strips. So you can do your strips at whatever width or length you want. And let's turn my iron on. I like 2.5. You can probably go as small as 2. I do know people that do that, but they have a really skinny border or binding. It's just not my preference. So 1, 2.5. And there you go. So we've got 1 strip. This is strip number 2. And strip number 3. We have a nice 1-inch strip that's left over. Oh, 1.5-inch strip. I have quite a bit of fabric left over from this project, so I'm gonna come up with a whole new project to use all that fabric on, because it's not just scraps. Now, if you're gonna do what I'm doing and try to cut your fabric in a small space, you're gonna wanna make sure that you're nice and straight, and when you put it on the fold, or put the fold on the line, and that line is straight. This fabric was cut a while ago, so it actually has a little bit of fraying on it. Even though that's a nice straight edge, I want to clean it up. So we already have 3. And now 4. 5. 6, and another strip. 7, and 8. So they give you extra in case you cut wrong, and that's a nice buffer. One more strip and then some good size strips. Anyway, these I'm going to add to, and look at all the fabric that I have left over from this project. So I must say that this was not an inexpensive project, but when you're all said and done and you have this big quilt and this much fabric left over, plus they gave you the patterns and video instruction, I think it's actually worth it when you consider all the extra fabric and stuff. Okay, now I always like to cut off the selvage. You can leave it on when you do your piecing or your joining at the ends, which I will show you how I do that. But it's easier just to have it gone. But if you wanted to, you could leave it on. Now, when you join it at the machine, you're going to put the fabric there, right side up, take your other piece right side down, and you're going to be on my side of the table. So you're going to be sewing, let's see here. You can pin, you can freehand, you can cut it. I don't usually mark it, but I'm marking for demonstration here. But you're going to sew from here to here, and I'm going to show you how I do it without having to mark up. But that is what you are losing in your inches when we take that into account, and then when you're all done, it will look like that. Now you can fussy cut and line up your stripes if you really want to, but honestly the binding is going to be folded over. And that's all that anyone is going to see on any side. It actually will be even less than that. So any little tiny bit of off in your pattern will be almost invisible. But that is up to you. So now I'm going to show you how to do this if you leave the selvages on. Right side up again. Here's the other piece, right side down. And notice that when I cross them, I'm making sure that the selvage is out of the way, that it's out of sight. So again, corner to corner, this is where you're going to sew, and then when you cut it off, you want to make sure that you don't just trim it like this. You're going to want to make sure you trim the white part off, because the selvage is a tighter weave and it will shrink at a different rate. And even though it's a small piece, by the time it gets on the binding, it's just better to not even mess with it. So that's just my 2 cents on that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting these off, and then I'm going to take you over to the machine. I'm going to actually show you how to do this. My favorite thing is to have this washi tape on here. It has the 1/4 inch mark on both sides, and then the red is the center line. Mine's getting kind of worn. Usually I like to have a little farther up, but it was lifting just like all these other spots. Anyway, come over here and take your pile, and I like to put it right here just below me. Take my first piece up here and then grab the end over here, and if you have a 1 color fabric, you want to make sure that you're not twisting as you sew and join your ends. This can help you from doing that. But here's that line that we drew. I'm going to place that down, and notice that line lines up with the grid mark. And now it's time to take the end of this one, bring it up, twist it, and put the next one down. This happens to be the other piece that we drew a line on. And I did that while the selvage was on, and I went ahead and took it off. And I actually don't like where that line is, and I won't follow it, but that's where that is. So here I'm going to be freehanding it. So this little point down here I've got on the red line, and the point of the needle is on the other point. And if I just follow this, keeping the point following that line, we're going to have good ends. So I'm going to show you what we look like with just these two, and I'll do the rest without you. But see, there you go. And I'm off a little bit, but when you fold it over and tuck everything in, you won't see. That will be just fine. This one, that's a little better. So be sure to cut off your pieces before you try to join it. That gives you a lot of bulk you want to get rid of. And the whole reason why you're sewing them together this way is to eliminate bulk. And that is kind of a funny little piece right there. I'm gonna do this. Go right from the corner, down, and I'll bet you we're better. Oh, look at that, I fixed it. But I have more bulk, so I'm just gonna trim this down. There we go. You can keep these. I have a little pile of misfit half square triangle cutoffs. Anyway. Now we're going to add the binding to the quilt. I have a drawer down here. I just stick the whole stringer of binding down in there. I don't fold it in half and press it. I find that I get really good results the way I do it. It is up to you if you want to do that step though. This is the front. This is the back. Sorry guys. This is the back. I like to take my binding, fold it in half, and attach it to the back. That way when it gets finished and it comes over to the front, I have control over exactly how that's going to look on the front side. And sometimes if it's not perfect, that will be showing on the back side. The nice thing about this is I have a lot of blue. The binding, the front and the back are all a dark blue. The quilter used a light blue to quilt it, but I think to do the binding, I'm going to go a little closer to that. But right now, what I have on my machine is a light blue. I'm going to go ahead and use that to put the binding on, because when you're sewing it here, you're going to be top stitching it here, and then it's going to be folded over, and it's going to just completely disappear. You might see a little stitch over here, which I think will actually kind of blend in with this, but the goal is to cover that. So at this stage, you could get away with not changing your thread unless it's really, really bright. But let's see what we could do here. Now this is a gigantic quilt. I always start in the middle of the quilt when I put my binding on. You don't want to be in an obvious spot. You don't want to be too close to the corner, and you also don't want to start on the end of your tail. You want to give a nice little tail to work with when you're done. I think wherever I am is good because I'm not near a corner. Now on my regular domestic machine, before I got my Juki, I would switch my foot to the 3/8 foot instead of leaving the 1/4 inch on. Because I am leaving the 1/4 inch on, I'm going to sew a little farther in from the edge than right on the edge, because I do like it to be a little thicker right there, and that's where that extra width of the regular foot comes in, but I don't want to deal with that, and I don't need to. Alright, so I will meet you at the corner. I want to show you, this is where one of my joined seams hit, And the reason we do it on an angle is to disperse that seam. So see how it's not even lining up with itself? We don't want it to. That way it will be flatter because there's a lot of bulk in the binding. Right now we have it doubled, but in a minute we're going to take this part, fold it over, and then fold it over again. So this is just dispersing that thickness, and that's why we don't like to do a straight stitch there. But I'll be honest, that's what I did for a long time until I was finally comfortable enough to do this. But I've learned some easy tricks, and I hope that you guys will learn them for me too. Now, I am stitching from the edge of the quilt. Hopefully so you can see. Okay, so I'm stitching from the edge of the quilt, right? Now, when I get down to the corner, I don't want to stitch off. I want to keep that same distance from the corner, and then to get a nice crisp, sharp point, I do an angle stitch to sew off. You can just finish it right there, do a double stitch. I start doing this and I have better points, and a lot of people are doing it. So try it if you haven't. Anyway, I've come here, I've sewn off to the edge. You can see it on both sides. Now you're going to take your binding, go up, and then come down. You're going to put it under their foot, and you're going to start on the edge. And I like to back stitch because that's a stress point. And keep going. Now I'm pulling my binding so it's not loose. It's got some tautness to it. And I do that throughout the whole thing. Coming up on the corner again. All these threads. Where I am. A little bit there. And all we're doing is sewing off the corner. Go up, come down, start on the edge at your 1/4 inch mark or wherever you're doing it, do a little back stitch, and off you go. I'm going to sew a little bit away from this corner, then go back and show you what the corner looks like. I haven't done that yet. Alright, so here's our corner. And then when you open it up, you're going to get that. And look how pretty that is. I really enjoy doing bindings. Tell me if you guys enjoy them or not. Some people just love it. Some people are indifferent. Some people hate them. I actually enjoy doing them. Now that I've learned the tricks to make it work and look good, and it just makes life easier, I really enjoy them. Alright, I'm to my last corner, and here's my beginning piece. So we have just a few feet to go, and then we're going to join them. So I'm going to show you again the corner, and then just let you watch what I do to finish it and to join it. So I've gone ahead and cut it there. Here's my other piece. This is how you join them. You're going to bring this up here Usually I just hold it, but today I'm going to clip it so it doesn't move. So there's that, okay? We're going to take this piece and we're going to fold it and overlap it, and then we're going to cut it. But where do you cut? That's the big question. Well, you're going to let it overlap as much as the width of the strip. So the strip is 2.5 inches. So we want an overlap of 2.5 inches. So here's our edge. Edge is right here. And I'll try to see, but that's it. You're going to come down 2.5 inches, and that puts us about right here. But I always like to go a little shorter by at least 1/4 inch. So I'm going to trim it. And I've got my tape in a funny spot. Let's see if I can do it. About 2 1/4 instead of 2.5. Make sure I'm not cutting through other things. I don't usually have this funny angle. Okay, and that's where we're going to cut all the way across. Just do a straight cut. Okay, now look at this. Remember how I needed 7.4 strips, which is just under 8 strips. So here's that half. There's more than a half of a strip right here. So our math worked. That just proved it. Okay, so now we're going to take this fabric, and it's going to go face up. We're going to take this end, and we kind of have to play with the quilt to get it in there, and we're going to bring it face down. And try to leave yourself some room. Sometimes you don't have any options. Sometimes you kind of forget and you just end up closer. But I find, even though I don't like to pin, that this is one of those places that I need to pin because it will shift a little bit. So same thing as we did at the beginning, where we're going to go from corner to corner, and I just need that pin in there to hold it still while I start, so that's okay that it had to come out. Now before we cut it, we're going to make sure it's right. And I twisted it. Well, let's not use that. All right, let's try it again. Face down, and then we're gonna turn it this way. Clearly I haven't mastered that one yet. We're still gonna cut it in the same, or sew it in the same place. We just need to not have it twist. And when we're done, there we go. Yeah. Well, okie dokie. It happens. Okay, again, put my pin in there or clip it or whatever, because you're dealing with a lot of this fabric coming off of the quilt that has a lot of weight to it, and it's pulling. All right, so tug it, see, look at that, it's good. If you don't like it, unpick it, keep trying. But that is what I do. Now it's time to trim that off, stitch this on, and then flip it over. Look at that, it's on. Time to flip it over. Now I have a decision to make. I have that light blue thread in there because I just got through using it on another quilt, and I hate changing thread, and for this point it was going to work. But it just so happens that this color does really well with matching with what's out here. However, all of the binding, the backing, and the front in that area are dark. I really think I should switch it to a dark blue. However, I'm kind of thinking if I didn't want to switch it, I could get away with it because of the fact that my quilting was done in that. And you can kind of compare, this is the stitch I just put on there compared to that one. If you look super hard, you can see there is a slight color difference. You know, I think I need to change the color. No matter how much I don't like doing it. That means I have to wind a bobbin, I have to find thread, but that's okay. In the end, I will be happy with what I've got going on with my quilt. Now that I'm done, I'm going to turn the quilt over, and I always start in the corner when I go to finish my binding. This is not as popular with a lot of people, but I have logic and I like how it works for me. All right, so I'm gonna go to that corner. See, and there's the back side. It looks so pretty. We're going to just go straight. And start in the corner. And come on down. And then we're going to tuck all the threads in that we run across or cut them. But we don't want to leave them. I'm going to show you how pretty this looks with the dark. See, look, that looks so much better now with that dark color. And then on the back side, this is what it's looking like, and I tend to sometimes fall off. But let me show you what's going on. So we have this straight stitch line right here, which is the line I use to attach this. So you want to roll this over and cover that line, and then stitch on top of the line or just barely in. And so if you can do it so you're just barely in, that's where you're going to find that you're right here. And if you're right on the line, you'll go down into the ditch. Now, when your thread matches this well, you're the only one who's really going to know the imperfections that are there. But if you have a really striking contrast between your fabric and your threads, everybody will notice every little thing. But you want to make sure you bring your fabric over to that. Now, even though I could bring it all the way over and tighten it, I don't want to do it this way because I don't know if you can see how wide that made it. And then on the back side, it's super narrow, and I'm going to get my stitching clear over here. So this is why I like to make a little thicker, a bigger seam allowance right here. And I'm still kind of learning how to do it using my 1/4 inch foot, because I'm used to using a bigger foot at this step. So even though I sewed away from the edge and then I gave myself some extra room, I still have a little more room in there than I like. But that's okay. Just don't pull tight if you end up like that. Now the problem is when you're short and you don't have enough to come over, and this is about as far as you can get it, it's like right here, you're just kind of stuck. And maybe somebody has some tips that they can share on what they do besides unpick it. Alright, so see how we're doing? And I will continue this to the corners, and I'll show you what I do there. Okay, I'm coming up on my corner. So, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to pull this corner down. I hope you can see this. I hope I'm a little off screen. That's okay, I'll come a little closer. Alright, so I'm going to pull this down and start at the bottom. I used to do it this way and fold it over, but it actually was a little more difficult than doing it this way where you put the bottom in first. Then you fold it over and you have a little more control over that mitered corner when you're coming at it this direction. And now I'm just going to go down to the intersection where they meet, and I'm going to go an extra stitch or two. This is my preference. I am the reinforcer of the reinforcing. So I just do it on all 4 corners so it's uniform, it looks good, and I feel like I've got a little bit of extra there to hold it in case things weren't exactly lined up right and you don't want to have a corner come out. Okay, so I'm just doing the same thing, and I'll show you that. Okay, now look at this. I'm really close to that, and it is just going to be that way. All right, so here's my corner. That would be a better point if I had tucked this in so it can't join down to here instead of up here. It is so close, it doesn't matter, but look, here's the other side. And I went down, I came across here, went to here, went down and back, and then up and back, and then straight. So it's this little crosshatch thing that I do right here that is extra. And when the threads match, you really don't see it, but I feel like I'm just making it more secure. Here's where I started. So I just go around, I tuck everything in or snip it off so there's nothing hanging out. And there was some threads there. Now this already started here, so look, I don't have to do what I've been doing with all the others and get this one ready. All I have to do is pull this side over and finish it. Look how easy that is. But don't stop in the corner. I mean, stop to change directions, but don't cut your thread here. Do your normal frontwards and backwards. Okay, so now I'm going to follow this stitch that's already there, and I'm going to come out a ways, and I'm going to try to stop where it is dark because the thread will blend in better and you won't see the end. So my reason for doing this is I've buried that start thread in that corner. It's not going to come out. And there we go. I am done. So that is how I do binding. This quilt is now complete. I will show the completed project in the next show and tell that I do. So you will see this along with all the other quilts that have been completed full length. And so if you want to see it completely done, go there. It will be posted soon. And if it has already been posted by the time you view this, there should be a link in the description that will take you to the video that will have this finished quilt in. So thank you for joining me. I hope you learned something or took away something. If you liked what you learned or saw, I'd love to hear your feedback on it. That's it. This is the end of this series on the Daydream Quilt with the Silver Jubilee fabric through Annie's Kits. Again, if this is your first time watching this and you just were watching it to see the binding process, this binding is the same for all quilts, for all my quilts anyway. But there's a whole series on how I put this quilt together. It is a block of the month, so check that out. Thanks guys, have a great day.